I've built a comfortable life for myself, having married into a wealthy family. But as I sat in the hotel lobby with Mason, his mocking tone pierced through my peace. He couldn't resist poking fun at my seemingly simple life, a contrast to his recent boast. He proudly mentioned his new wife, none other than the daughter of the president of Goldsmith Enterprises. His laughter, full of self-satisfaction, filled the space. But it was the mention of Goldsmith Enterprises that caught my attention. I recognized the name but couldn't place it until it clicked. Mason continued to gloat, unaware of the irony in his words. I'm Patricia, 37, content with my life alongside my husband Mason. I work in my family's real estate business, mostly handling administrative tasks, while my father oversees the major decisions. As the only child, I'm expected to take over the company one day. I balance my career and personal life carefully, especially around Mason. He finished high school and works for a moving company, a demanding job I respect. To avoid making him feel less than, I rarely mention my university degree or my future role as president. Mason and I met during college through a mutual friend. After she moved, Mason helped with her relocation and eventually took an interest in me. Initially drawn to her, he shifted his attention when she turned him down. His easygoing nature balanced my more meticulous one, and we quickly became close. After a brief courtship, we married in our late 20s. Our marriage has been smooth, with Mason's parents being a warm, supportive presence, a refreshing contrast to the typical in-law tensions many of my friends face. Despite Mason's grueling job that often keeps him out late and leaves him exhausted, he's always been committed to our marriage. On his toughest days, he'd thank me for waiting up to share dinner. I felt fortunate, but after a year of marriage, cracks began to form. One night, as we prepared for bed, Mason brought up having children, his tone edged with irritation. I'd thought about it, but hadn't pressured him. I believed it would happen naturally with time. It's only been a year, there's no rush, I reassured him, wanting to ease his frustration. I did want children, but stressing about it wouldn't help. Still, Mason grew more insistent, citing statistics. You know, there's about a 90% chance of conceiving within a year if you're not using contraception. That number, though high, seemed surprising to me. If you're worried, maybe we should both get tested, I suggested, thinking it would be a sensible way to address any issues. But Mason snapped, his words filled with accusation. What are you implying? That it's my fault? It's usually the woman's fault anyway. His words stung, and I was taken aback. I hadn't blamed him, only suggested a joint approach, but Mason was certain it was my problem. Still shaken, I replied, of course, you get tested. I'm too busy with work, he retorted harshly. You're just coasting in your dad's company. His words hit hard. I wasn't coasting, though my job was mostly administrative. I was learning management skills from my father, preparing for the day I would lead the company. That night, any attempt at communication was met with coldness, and we went to bed, backs turned, silence heavy between us. Mason's attitude shifted from that moment on. One evening, after a meeting with my father about the company's future, I came home to find Mason furious over dinner. I'm sorry, I just got home 15 minutes ago. Let me start cooking now, I explained, but he dismissed it with a bitter remark, typical of a small company's boss's daughter. He had no idea the scale of my father's real estate empire. His assumptions stung, and the bitterness in his voice made everything more difficult, casting a shadow over our once harmonious relationship. Arguing felt futile, so I hurried to the kitchen, trying to keep the peace. Have a drink and relax while you wait, I suggested, knowing it would calm him. It was sad that our marriage had come to rely on his nightly drinks to keep the peace, but it felt necessary. The next day, Mason's coldness lingered as he left for work, reminding me sharply, make sure dinner's ready when I get home. I sighed, planning my day. I had an appointment for fertility testing, something Mason had insisted on, though he refused to take part himself. If the issue was with me, I wanted to address it immediately, knowing time was of the essence. The clinic was crowded, and I waited for over an hour before my tests. The doctor said the results would be ready at my next visit. The thought that I might be the one with fertility issues was unsettling, but I was prepared to face whatever came next. When Mason came home, I told him about the test. His response was dismissive. Figures, if it's you, it's good you're getting tested, let me know the results. His assumption that I was the cause of our struggle to conceive hurt deeply. 6 years passed, and I was 37. Our efforts to have a child continued without success, and Mason seemed to have given up on fatherhood. His late nights turned into full-blown absences, sometimes not coming home at all. When he did, he'd boast about being out drinking or singing karaoke until dawn. He was acting like a carefree college student again, not a devoted husband. It was frustrating beyond words. Work had become more demanding, and our dreams of starting a family had to be postponed. But Mason's recent behavior was growing intolerable. One day, after he left the house on his day off, I found his smartphone lying in the living room. I picked it up to return it to his room, but it rang just then. The caller ID showed the name Diana. Thinking she was a colleague, I answered to let her know Mason had left his phone behind. "Hey Mason, you're late. I've been waiting 50 minutes. Hurry up or we'll miss the park opening. We haven't had a date in so long," the voice said, flirtatious and familiar. My heart sank as I realized the woman wasn't just a colleague, she was someone Mason was seeing romantically. I stood there, phone in hand, shaking with disbelief and anger. While I'd struggled with the possibility of infertility, Mason had been carrying on an affair. His distance now made sense, but the betrayal cut deeper than I ever expected. With a mix of fury and sorrow, I decided to confront him. Unlocking his phone with ease, I found his call history and messages filled with intimate exchanges with Diana. I documented everything, taking photos of the evidence before returning his phone as if nothing had changed. A month passed in this tense limbo before my father called me into his office. "I have something important to discuss," he said gravely, his tone serious enough to heighten my already escalating stress. That evening, sensing the inevitable, Mason suggested we separate. I was already contemplating how to approach the divorce given his betrayal, so his suggestion, though painful, felt strangely convenient. "Let's divorce," I said, the words finally leaving my lips. I agreed quickly, my response sharp and resolute. Mason appeared caught off guard by my decisiveness, perhaps expecting a different reaction, maybe hoping I'd try to salvage something from our marriage. Despite the sting of seeing his relief, I signed the divorce papers he handed me. "I'll file these tomorrow. I'm leaving this house," he said nonchalantly, as if the decision was a mere formality. "Are you sure about the mortgage?" I asked, casually probing. I suspected he hadn't fully thought through his financial situation without me. His job, though demanding, was not lucrative, and I doubted he could handle the mortgage on his own. He seemed confident, or perhaps naive. Given his betrayal, I felt no need to make things easier for him. A few days later, I moved back in with my parents. They were initially concerned about my emotional state but became enraged when I revealed Mason's infidelity. They stood by my decision to leave him, reassuring me that parting ways was the best choice. I threw myself into work, trying to push past the emotional turmoil of my broken marriage. A year passed in a whirlwind of commitments, but I was burning out. One evening, seeing my exhaustion, my father suggested I take a break. "Why don't you take a trip? Things are about to get busier," he said, his concern evident. Grateful for the suggestion, I agreed. I needed a change of scenery, a chance to recharge, so I booked a solo trip to the Northeast. The crisp, fresh air there had a calming effect on me, and the locals were kind and welcoming. Slowly, I began to heal. I then decided to treat myself further and booked a stay at a renowned hotel in Los Angeles. After checking in, I settled in the lobby, sipping a welcome drink, feeling the weight of my journey lift. I was so relaxed that I half-joked to myself about moving here permanently. Just then, a voice I didn't expect broke my peace. Hey, what are you doing here?" I turned, startled, to see Mason walking into the lobby with 2 large suitcases. My ex-husband, of all people, had appeared during what was supposed to be my peaceful retreat. My heart skipped a beat, but the shock didn't end there. He was accompanied by a young woman, probably in her early 20s. Her flawless skin, bold makeup, and red nails made her stand out, especially against the chilly northeastern weather. Her short skirt seemed out of place in the cold, and she leaned on Mason with a look of familiarity. "Why are you here, and who is she?" I blurted, unable to stop myself, though part of me didn't want the answers. Mason smiled, a gleam of excitement in his eyes. "Let me introduce you. This is Diana, my new wife. We're on our honeymoon, and guess what? She's the daughter of a wealthy businessman." The name Diana hit me like a punch. This was the same Diana from the phone call months ago. I felt a rush of discomfort at the thought of him flaunting his younger, wealthier wife. "You're alone? How sad," Mason sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. Diana, standing beside him, added with a smirk, Is this your ex-wife? She looks old. Hurry up with the check-in. I managed to stay composed, but the jabs kept coming as Mason proudly wrapped an arm around Diana. Yeah, I'm set for life now, married into money. You're still stuck in your simple life, he taunted, his laughter harsh against the serene atmosphere. He continued to gloat. Diana is Goldsmith's daughter. You know Goldsmith Enterprises? He added, as if the name alone was supposed to impress me. The mention of Goldsmith Enterprises rang a bell, but it took a moment for the connection to click. I nodded slowly, recalling the name. Oh, I know them. They're in that big building downtown, right? I've been there, I said, sounding casual. Mason raised an eyebrow. Really? Well, her family owns a huge company. We even paid off our house mortgage quickly. Thanks for making the divorce easy, Patricia, he added, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I stayed calm. Yes, I know the building. My father owns it, I replied, almost matter-of-factly. Mason and Diana both stopped in their tracks, clearly confused. What do you mean, your father? They asked in unison. I smiled gently, letting the words sink in. My father owns that building. He rents it to Goldsmith Enterprises for their offices, and actually, recently he's been having some issues with them. You see, there's been a problem with unpaid rent. Their eyes widened in disbelief. Wait, what? Diana laughed nervously. That's impossible. Goldsmith Enterprises is thriving. I reached into my purse, unfazed, and pulled out my phone. Let me show you, I said, dialing my father. When he answered, I asked him to send me a photo of the rent reminder notice. A moment later, my father's text came through, a clear image of the overdue rent notice, showing that Goldsmith Enterprises had missed 4 months of payments. I turned the screen towards Mason and Diana, watching their expressions shift from confusion to shock. See for yourselves, I said, if this isn't cleared up soon, my father will have no choice but to take legal action. What are you going to do about it? Diana's confidence wavered, and she muttered under her breath, well, my dad's been stressed lately. I guess the sales have been slow. I took a deep breath, letting his words wash over me without reacting. Mason, please, do you honestly think I still care about you, after everything that happened? I don't. I'm sorry for Diana, though, she's caught up with someone like you. His face reddened with rage. You're an old hag. You'll never have a family, never get married again. Diana and I will have kids after this honeymoon. He spat, his words thick with spite. I stayed calm, my gaze unwavering. Oh, by the way, I'm 5 months pregnant, I said, dropping the bombshell. And I'm married now, too. I found someone who truly supports me, someone who actually cares. Mason's face drained of color. Wait, you're pregnant? He asked, his voice cracking. I nodded, the truth finally sinking in for him. Yes, I'm pregnant, and no, I wasn't using birth control. I didn't need to. Unlike you, my new husband and I didn't face infertility issues. I'm happy with my life, and I've moved on. His confusion deepened. But Diana and I, what does this mean for us? He muttered, lost in his self-centered logic. Diana, her patience worn thin, snapped, it means you're an idiot, Mason, you don't even know what you want. I had no more to say. Keep your mess separate from mine, and about the rent, Goldsmith Enterprises needs to settle it, or we'll proceed with legal action. Goodbye, Mason. With that, I turned and walked away, leaving him and Diana behind, their argument fading as I returned to my hotel room. Back home, my new husband greeted me with a warm smile. Welcome back. Was everything okay? Of course, I replied, feeling truly at peace for the first time in a long while. Since marrying him, my life had taken a positive turn, and thoughts of Mason slowly faded into the past. I never saw him again, but through my father's contacts, I learned that Mason's newfound life had quickly unraveled. Goldsmith Enterprises had been drowning in debt. Diana's father had tried to cover up a massive embezzlement scandal, but once it was exposed, the company's stock plummeted, and employees left in droves. It was clear that they couldn't even pay their rent, let alone fix the damage.